Pokedex entries can tell you a little bit about each Pokemon, but some make no sense at all or are just really weird. Listen to this dex entry. It spends its time running around wastelands. If anybody steals its beloved berries, it will chase them down and exact its revenge. What Pokemon do you think that is? It mentions berries, so it has to be a good Pokemon, right? Turns out it's Flittle. I don't know what type of revenge this floating little chicken nugget in a skirt plans on doing, but it's best to steer clear of Flittle and not touch any of its berries. On a lighter note, let's check out some other bird Pokemon dex entries like Doduo and Dodrio. Doduo's Pokedex entry in Pokemon Emerald says how it can run up to speeds up to 60 miles per hour or about 96 kilometers per hour if you don't work off of Freedom units. This is incredibly fast, especially for a Pokemon with a base speed stat of only 75. So it would make sense for Dodrio to be faster, right? Dodrio is faster in terms of base speed, as Dodrio has a pretty solid speed stat of 110, but according to its Pokedex entry in Yellow version, all of the 5th generation games and the Let's Go games, Dodrio can only run at speeds up to 40 miles per hour, which is significantly less than its pre-evolution that has a lower base speed stat, and Dodrio just looks like it would be faster. They do say 2 heads is better than 1 though, and apparently 2 heads is also better than 3. Enough bird talk for now, birds aren't even real anyway. How about Cacturne though? A Pokemon that nobody really talks about or even remembers unless you battle Sydney in the Hoenn Elite Four, and nobody even remembers Sydney that much either. In Cacturne's dex entry for Pokemon Sapphire, it states, if a traveler is going through a desert in the thick of night, Cacturne will follow in its ragtag group. The Pokemon are biding their time, waiting for the traveler to tire and become incapable of moving. This sounds a bit creepy, but why would the Cacturnes wait for the traveler to be incapable of moving? If we take a look at Cacturne's dex entry for Pokemon Violet, it states it lives in deserts. It becomes active at night when it hunts for prey exhausted from the desert's heat. This seems to imply that Cacturne preys on actual people who got lost in the desert, but surprisingly, or maybe unsurprisingly, this is just one of many Pokedex entries which imply that Pokemon prey on humans. Another example is Phantump. In Pokemon Y, its dex entry says, according to old tales, these Pokemon are stumps possessed by the spirits of children who died while lost in the forest. Now this alone doesn't imply that Phantumps are doing the killings of children in forests. However, if we look at its dex entry for Pokemon Ultra Sun, it says, by imitating the voice of a child, it causes people to get hopelessly lost deep in the forest. It's trying to make friends with them. Which shows that this little tree stump might not be so innocent after all if it's also luring people into the woods. Ghost-type Pokemon in general tend to have the creepier Pokedex entries, like Haunter. In Scarlet version, its dex entry says, it likes to lurk in the dark and tap shoulders with its gaseous hand. Its touch causes endless shuddering. The endless shuddering part sounds like an exaggeration, but if we take a look at older dex entries for Haunter from Pokemon Silver version, it says, its tongue is made of gas. If licked, its victim starts shaking constantly until death eventually comes. So it looks like the endless shuddering does result in death. And if that wasn't enough, Haunter's dex entry in Pokemon Emerald literally says how this Pokemon will try to lick you with its tongue to steal your life away. That's enough morbid dex entries for now. Let's get back to ones that are just weird or don't make a lot of sense. Have you ever read any of Igglybuff's dex entries? Probably not, because who reads dex entries? But many of them say how once it starts bouncing, it's impossible for it to stop. Then in Violet version, its dex entry is so wholesome for some reason, stating, it likes to sing, but it's not yet good at it. With praise and encouragement, it will get better little by little. Looks like this encouragement helped out since its evolution, Jigglypuff has a dex entry in Ultra Sun stating, recordings of Jigglypuff's strange lullabies can be purchased from department stores. These CDs can be found near the bedding area, which has to mean that Jigglypuff is at least a good enough singer for people to buy its CDs, since why else would anybody want to buy them? It is fitting that Jigglypuff's CDs are located near the bedding section though, since it puts you to sleep, much like how in Hypno's Yellow version Pokedex entry it says, avoid eye contact if you come across one. It will try to put you to sleep by using its pendulum. Other dex entries say how Hypno polishes its pendulum while waiting for its prey, and how there was one incident where it took away a child it hypnotized. If that's not creepy enough, in Pokemon Stadium 2 it says when it's very hungry, it puts humans to sleep, then feasts on their dreams. And yeah, I know I said that's enough of the morbid dex entries when I talked about Haunter earlier, but the transition from Jigglypuff to Hypno was just too easy to make. They are both Generation 1 Pokemon, which have the bulk of the weird dex entries, since back when they were making dex entries for Red and Blue, they barely knew what they were doing. In fact, they barely knew what they were doing when they were making Red and Blue as a whole. Like, does Pokemon take place in the real world or not? Sure, there are places in Pokemon based off of real world places, like how Unova is based off America, but mainly New York, and how Galar is based off the United Kingdom. But just because a place is based off a real world place doesn't mean it's the same exact thing as the real world place. Then there's Mew's dex entry in Pokemon Stadium that straight up says that it comes from South America. Does South America canonically exist in the Pokemon world then? We haven't had a region based off of any South American countries yet, so maybe? But then the existence of South America implies the existence of North America too, wouldn't it? This is why we can't take these Pokedex entries too seriously, since a lot of them contradict each other, or just completely throw Pokemon geography through a loop. This is the case with Raichu's old dex entry stating how it can shock an Indian elephant, which was later changed in Legends Arceus to say a Copperjaw instead of an Indian elephant. Copperjaw's dex entries do mention how they did come from a region far away or from some other faraway land, so maybe in a future generation we'll get to see the region that Copperjaw originally came from, and they'll update its dex entry too. Horsea's dex entries mention how it can use its ink to shoot flying bugs out of the sky. Now this could just be bug-type Pokemon of course, like Beedrill or Venomoth, although I can't imagine bug-type Pokemon would taste very good, and when other dex entries mention bugs, they tend to say bug types, while Horsea's just says bugs. A car tire would probably taste better than a bug, and we can ask Swalot about that since its Fire Red and Leaf Green dex entry states how it can swallow a tire in one gulp. Now, why would you ever want to swallow a tire in one gulp? I have no idea, but Swalot can do it. Out of all Pokemon though, Appletun would probably taste the best since it's basically just an apple pie. This is backed up by Appletun's dex entry in Pokemon Violet, which says, when some Lechonk come along to lick the sweet nectar on Appletun's back, Appletun will spew sticky nectar at them to drive them away. To be honest, I can't really blame Lechonk for trying this, and I like it when Pokedex entries reference their relationships with other Pokemon too. There's a lot of other dex entries that mention Pokemon doing weird stuff with other Pokemon like Lechonk does to Appletun. Just like how in Heart Gold and Soul Silver, it says how Metagross folds its 4 legs when flying. Its 4 brains are said to be superior to a supercomputer. Despite this, Metagross can't learn flying, but it's pretty cool how it has 4 brains. If you thought that seeing Metagross fly around would be weird, which it probably would be, what about seeing a horde of Stonejourners just gathering around forming a circle? According to its dex entry in Shield version, once a year, on a specific date and at a specific time, they gather out of nowhere and form up in a circle. Why are they doing this? What are they plotting? I guess we'll never know. I guess you'd rather see a bunch of Stonejourners gather around in a circle than a Bewear flailing its arms around. Because in Ultra Sun, Bewear's Pokedex entry says, it waves its hands wildly in intimidation and warning. Life is over for anyone who doesn't run away as fast as possible. I know there's quite a few dex entries that suggest that a Pokemon killed someone or something, but they rarely ever say things like, life is over for anybody who doesn't run away as fast as possible. When it comes to gross Pokedex entries though, Darumaka takes the cake. In its Pokemon White dex entry, it says, Darumaka's droppings are hot, so people used to put them in their clothes to keep themselves warm. Now, I don't know about you, but I don't care how cold it is or how warm Darumaka's droppings are, but I never want to put them anywhere near me. At least Darumaka's droppings aren't as bad as Turtonator's, whose Pokemon Shield dex entry says how Turtonator's droppings are also dangerously explosive. I don't mean explosive in the context that you're probably thinking, I mean explosive as in they literally explode. That's enough talk about droppings, but there are a surprising amount of Pokemon who mention droppings in their dex entries. On a less disgusting note now, we have Magcargo, a rather unassuming fire and rock type Pokemon that many people mistake for a Generation 3 Pokemon, but it's actually a Generation 2 Pokemon. You just barely ever see it in Gen 2 games. Coincidentally, in its Sapphire dex entry, it says how Magcargo's body temperature is approximately 18,000 degrees Fahrenheit. That is incredibly hot, especially when you consider that the sun is approximately 10,000 degrees Fahrenheit, making this silly little fire slug or snail thing hotter than the sun. Now going back to real world places that are referenced in Pokedex entries, Xatu's dex entry in Pokemon Silver version says, in South America, it is said that its right eye sees the future and its left eye views the past. Many of its other dex entries say how it can see the past and future at the same time, which must get really confusing and probably cause a few headaches. Some other dex entries also detail how some Pokemon interact with other Pokemon, like how Drapions dex entry mentions how it takes great pride in its strength, can turn its head back 180 degrees, and is also known as the Sand Demon due to how vicious it is in the desert. Yet when confronted by Hippowdon, Drapion will keep a low profile and won't pick a fight with Hippowdon, making it Drapion's kryptonite. I guess that makes sense because Hippowdon is a big ground type and Drapion is a poison type after all. But Hippowdon also has some cool interactions with another Pokemon in Dwebble. Since Hippowdon is rather large, it gets a lot of rocks stuck in the crevices of its body. Dwebble help Hippowdon dislodge such stones, so Hippowdons look after these Pokemon. So I guess that means that Drapion won't mess with Dwebbles in the desert either. It is a great thing to have Hippowdon on your side, since its huge mouth can open up to be 7 feet wide and can completely crush a car. Much like how Hippowdons can crush cars, you can also consider crushing that like button since it supports the channel a lot, and also consider subscribing for more Pokemon videos. Thanks for watching, have a great rest of your day, and bye bye.